right? And then you're the next one that I've met that's a prior service member that's recovered, from stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Um, what was it? What's that story? How did you recover out of it? How did you learn about it? I mean, we could probably have a whole podcast dedicated just to this, but I think I'd like you to just share a little bit because there's. I mean, I just found out the other day another a close friend of mine, showed up to work and all of a sudden his legs and his arms couldn't move and they went in and he had tumors all up and down his spine. So um, I don't know what's going on there. I don't think it's a coincidence anymore, but if you just share a little bit of your story.
Yeah. So one of the things, especially those of us in the special operations community, we pride ourselves on being professional athletes in some way, shape, or form. Even after service, a lot of us still run. Maybe they're not Navy SEALs. Maybe they've become Gravy SEAls.
That's right, right.
There's supposed to be some humor in that. But we all, there's something physically and emotionally cathartic about being able to exercise. And
Yeah.
so I don't know what it was. I just noticed like I wasn't able to recover from my exercise regularly. Every time I do, squats or deadlifts or something, like my back would hurt for like a week and I didn't understand it. It got to the point where I couldn't run. And so I thought I'd just blown a disc or something like that. So I was going to chiropractic like, twice a week for like 3 months and it just wasn't getting any better. And I should have listened to my wife. Ladies, gentlemen out there, listen to your significant others. If something's wrong, just swallow your pride and go to the doctor, please. So, it wasn't until I went and saw, a physiatrist that ordered an MRI that we discovered that I had like full-blown cancer in my pelvis, in my hip, in my spine, in my ribs. It was everywhere. And it hadn't gotten into my vital organs yet, thank you, Jesus. But if I'd waited much longer, I might not be here to have this podcast with you today. And so again, I spent a lot of time looking forward, not looking back. But if I were to go back, I would say, go to the doctor, please.
Yeah.
Stop
Yeah.
being so prideful and arrogant.
Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett. You guys are all very familiar with me. And today I brought in another Navy man, former Navy corpsman, Michael DeSelm. Like I said, Navy veteran, cancer survivor, husband, father. And we're going to dig into everything that I just said there and more, and especially into his role that he has now with Stop Soldier Suicide, which I'll share a little bit more at the end about what I'm doing with them here in about 6 weeks from now to hopefully raise a little bit of money for a great organization. I'm not going to monopolize the microphone. I'm going to pass it off to Michael. He can introduce himself, and we'll get on with the conversation.
Now, thanks for the handoff, Yuma. Yeah, hi. My name's Michael DeSelm. I'm just a dude who tries to abide. Big fan of The Big Lebowski. If you don't already know that movie, go back and watch it. Yes, am a 15-year Navy corpsman. I am the father of an active duty Navy corpsman. Somewhere along the way, my body got bored and decided that cancer would be something cool to beat as well. I spent 7 years as a Navy diver, working in special operations, which was really, really a key experience for my life. And I am really, really thankful for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, I'm honored to have you on here. Thanks for taking some time on a. Most people are taking the today off, so I really appreciate it. Let's get straight into it. The question everybody gets: You're on the Leading with Vulnerability podcast, so we got to know from somebody, former Navy man, cancer survivor, husband, father, pastor. All right, I forgot to mention that. What is your definition of vulnerability?
Uh, let's start with the hard questions out the gate, right?
That's right, right. That's right.
I think vulnerability is the willingness to show your scars. It's the humility to be fully exposed, maybe even kind of let your gut hang out. Um, you mentioned that I was a pastor. I wasn't going to go there, but you stated that. So uh, Jesus is talked about being meek, i.e., strong enough to do whenever he wants as an omnipotent, omniscient God. Uh, but he was meek enough, humble enough to be reserved. And so I think vulnerability has that element of meekness, especially those of us that served and those of us that served in special operations. Like we pride ourselves on being strong, on being protectors, providers. And I think vulnerability is the willingness to set all of that aside and let the imperfections show. Let the scars, because I think those scars are what they help define key points in our story, but they also provide contact points for other folks to bond with us.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Um, when I first joined the military, I tried to hide all that,
Mhm.
all the weakness, if you would. And then as I grew as a leader and a person and a husband and a father, I realized I was able to bond with people and lead people more effectively the more open I was with
Mhm.
them. Did you kind of have some similar experiences in your life?
Yeah, nobody hates that. Nobody loves that second lieutenant fresh out that thinks that they have it all figured out. For us, it was an ensign. You don't want to follow that guy. I think about Band of Brothers and like, trying to do land nav, like no second lieutenant knows land nav.
Yeah,
It's a given, right?
right, right.
But when you're able to step back and just kind of lead with humility, lead with grace, know that you're not the smartest person in the room, and you just everybody else's strengths show up, and
Yeah.
that's when we get to complement each other and really go forward places.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I love that, and that's probably it's the first question out of the gate, and one of my favorite ones, and the reason I did this. But before your civilian time, you did a significant amount of time in the Navy,
Mhm.
15 years as a corpsman. Uh, what's your Navy story? What led you to the Navy? I stood outside all the recruiting offices in a shopping strip and decided on Army because I had some background there. What led you to the Navy?
Yeah. So I really wanted to be an Air Force PJ, but the Air Force wasn't hiring the day that I was looking for a job. Which it is what it is. I've spent a lot of time in counseling looking back, so I'm really just trying to look forward these days. I landed in the Navy for a couple of different reasons. I grew up in a Navy family,
Mhm.
so I was very familiar with that. I was in Navy ROTC in high school, so very familiar with that as well. There is a Gunga Din part of my soul, maybe even Jimmy Buffett, Pirate Looks at 40, that just longs to be on the ocean with
Yeah.
nothing around. That is a peaceful place. I grew up in San Diego surfing. I grew up on the water. And when I was going into the military, I knew that I wanted to go into medicine. My mom was terminally ill when I was young, so I spent a lot of time caring for her. It came second nature to me. I kind of figured that's where the best fit for me was. And so I started looking at where the best fit for medicine was for me, and looking at the breadth of experiences that the Navy offered for a medic versus Army and Air Force. I think I landed, in the Sailors Club because that's where I belong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, that's awesome. So I've had a few Army medics on the podcast in the past, and shared some of their stories. What's the day to day life? What's it like on the Navy side of medicine? What was it like for 15 years doing that?
Man, it really depends on where you're stationed and what you're doing, right? I think about my oldest daughter, who's a Navy corpsman. She's in quad zero in Navy MOS terms, or 8404. She's with the Marine unit, and her day to day sucks. It really does. It is a grind from 0430 to 1700 every day. She's on the range. She's sitting on her butt, twiddling thumbs. She's taking care of knucklehead Marines that are eating crayons and chewing on Motrin, and that day to day is not what I signed up to do. I was like, man, I went through field med school, and I'm kind of glad I didn't go with the Marine unit because,
Yeah.
I don't want to babysit. But I did a lot of different jobs in the Navy. I spent a couple of years on a cancer ward. I spent a year putting in central lines. I went to scrub school, spent 3 years as a head and neck surgical tech before I went to dive school. The running joke is that I went to dive school in 2002 because Afghanistan is landlocked.
Yeah, that's right.
Pause. Everybody think about that for a second. It's supposed to be funny. But day to day, it really does depend, right? If you're a shipboard corpsman, your day to day, it looks like doing water testing, messing and berthing inspections, making sure that the food is good and doesn't suck and not bad. The benefit of being a Navy corpsman on a big ship is like you get to sample the skipper's meals, and
Yeah,
if you make good with the CS or the MS back in my day, you're eating kind of good in the neighborhood, right?
yeah, yeah,
So it does depend. But when I was with the teams, my day to day, we were deployed a lot. It was a very busy time in our country's history. 2002 to
yeah,
2009, when I was with SDV Team 2, we were busy. We were doing op tempo was super up. I remember my first year at the team. I think I was home 6 weeks throughout the entire year, and it wasn't all at once.
Yeah.
And so, but here's what I can tell you, and those of us in the military, we know this. It's those shared suffering experiences that breed familiarity and camaraderie. And so, until you've sat at camp for, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, twiddling your thumbs with, waiting for something bad to happen and waiting, hurry up and wait, hurry up
Yeah.
and wait, hurry up, wait. Like those are the fun moments. That's where we make friends.
Yeah, that's funny. Hurry up and wait. I think that's something that transcends services. We all know what hurry up and wait is, and we've been there. And I mean, your job, same as a Army medic, a Navy Corps. We we don't want you to have to employ your skills that you've used, right? We don't want to say medic or corpsman or and
Uh,
have you come over and do everything you've done. Yeah, doc, which resonates very. Everybody's got a doc on the team, and
mhm.
it means a lot. You got to have them there, but you don't want to use them. What's it like being in a profession, where you train so hard, but you never want to have to employ your skills?
Um, what's it like? It is really fun. Yeah, as doc, and let me preface it with this statement: if you suck at your job, your life is going to be miserable. If you are a
Right.
bad corpsman, if you can't figure out a knee sprain, if you can't, fix the stick in the eye, your life is going to be really, really miserable. But if you're worth your weight in salt, you get to do the CQC, you get to do the spy rigging, you get to jump out of the helicopter, you get to do life alongside of some of America's most elite qualified individuals. And that is fun.
Yeah,
That is a lot
that's
of
right.
fun. And you're right. You hope it doesn't happen where you have to use it. And the moments where I had to spring into action, I look back in retrospect, I'm like, oh, I did that.
Yeah,
I
that's
guess I
right.
do know how to do my job. That's cool because you don't think about it. And I think all of us understand this, right? We train, we train, we train, hoping that we never have to use our skills in some context, or knowing that because we use our skills, that's why we are excellent at what we do. So there is a lot of hurry up and wait, but there's those downtimes when you can learn, when you can
Yeah,
read. You have to be a lifelong learner, especially in medicine.
yeah, that's
And
right.
so much of medicine, much to the dismay of many folks, is a process of elimination. It's not like a hey,
Yeah,
eureka, aha, I figured it out. It's like it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, so I guess it's got to be this.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. And you're right. When I talk to people that are thinking about joining the service, I'm like, hey, if you want to make sure you're not ever cut off of a manifest, go to the medical field because the medic, the senior medics, they're going out every night. And all my time as a platoon sergeant or first sergeant, I had a medic in my hip pocket everywhere he went, and he was involved in every action, clearing rooms, doing CQB. We trained them on breaches and stuff because they had to be, not only ready to do their medicine but also to fight too. So
mhm.
it's a great profession if you want some job security in the service. The medical field is a good way to go. And with that, all your time, if you look back on it in retrospect, the question I ask everybody, uh, what was your most memorable moment in service or something you look back on and have a laugh or a chuckle?
um Everything and nothing, right? So there's when you look back at the highlight reel of your career, you recognize that there are moments where you were a total idiot and tool, and then there were moments where you're like, man, I want to be that person again.
Yeah.
I remember my first platoon at SDV Team Two, fresh out of dive school. I was the class honor man. I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I was good at my job, but I also was the junior corpsman in my platoon, and so I really thought that my voice needed to be heard. Um, and it didn't. I just needed to sit down, shut up, and hold on and do my job and be quiet.
Right.
But I remember we're on the sub doing some dive training for our teams, doing some lockouts, and we did our dive brief. And I don't know why I felt the need to stand up and make my voice heard. And we finished up the brief, and docs, anything you got to say. And I'm like, gentlemen, stay ahead of the pressure. We're diving at
Right.
30 feet. There's no freaking pressure at 30 feet. Stop, idiot. That was such a memorable moment that it made it on my paddle when I left the team 7 years later. So, not my best moment, not my finest moment, but certainly a funny moment for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's something you can always look back on and have a laugh. And I've got those too. Stuff that is written on plaques around here that, I said in a moment that stuck forever, and those are
Mhm.
great times. Um,
To that point, if I may,
yeah,
Aristotle says, uh, "A fool speaks because they need to be heard. A wise man speaks because he has something to say."
yeah, that's
If
right.
I'd only learned that lesson then and not here now, for
Yeah,
what it's
yeah, 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 absolutely. And I think that resonates with all of us. Everybody in the military has that. Right? We were kids when we joined,
Mhm.
right? And kids do stupid things because I got four of them, and I completely know what that means. So all the time in uniform. Question I ask everybody: what was your most challenging day that you had that was hard to get through, but you made it, right?
Yeah, most challenging day. Mike Slinger, if you're ever watching this, Scott Roller, if you're ever watching this, my hardest day was I got fired from my platoon 2 weeks before we deployed, my first platoon. Um, Scott Roller, my senior medic, and I, we loved hanging out together outside of work. We were really good for whatever reason at work. There was challenges, and I own that. I was young. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I don't think I was willing to ask the questions to learn either. So I don't think I was moldable, approachable, and teachable. But getting fired 2 weeks before we have a deployment that you spent a year working up for, knowing that there's a possibility for a real world op, for a chance to do some really good things, and being told like, hey, deployment is where the fun things happen, both professionally and also fun because there's just good things that happen,
Yeah.
and that was crushing. Like I said, I was the class honor man in dive school. I don't think I graduated a single Navy school not in the top 10%. Um, and as someone who thought himself reasonably smart and reasonably well trained, that was a crushing blow for my ego. And the dive community in the Navy it's small, especially the dive medics. There's like maybe 1,000 of us, maybe even smaller. I don't even know the numbers, but when you screw up, everybody in the community hears about it. And when you do good, yeah, somebody hears about it, but not everybody, right? Because as a volunteer only community with a high fail rate, they expect you to do good, right?
Right.
So getting fired, like I didn't know I could get fired, number one, and still have a job, but it was crushing to my ego. I thought my career was over. I was already facing some challenges at home. Uh, and it led to a crisis moment for me as a person, like what am I worth, what am I about, what's my value? Do I belong here? It was a really really hard day. It was a really
Yeah.
really hard day. I
Yeah. That.
survived.
Yeah. Yeah. And it probably came out better on the backside, right? Would you say?
I hope so. i
Yeah.
I think humility, either you embrace it or it will bring you to your knees one way or another.
Yeah.
um, it was a humbling moment that I needed, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and I've been there. Exactly been there. Pulled out of a position in combat, and I still look back at that moment and go, "What could I have done better?" and stuff. So definitely tough. Definitely tough. But it's not all bad.
No.
Just like the thing written on your paddle there. Is there a time you like the best day? Like this was the best day I ever had in uniform. What comes to mind?
One of my best days. So, one of them would be the day that I graduated dive school, and my dad, who was a Coast Guardsman, retired. He did 40 years, 8 years active, and 32 years as a reservist. The man had gold on his sleeve, basically from the cuff to the shoulder. He
Oh
was a
yeah,
senior chief, and him re-enlisting me at dive school that day was a really really neat moment for me. But I think one of the things that I'm most proud of. Uh, I'm not sure how advancement works in the Army. In the Navy, you have to take a test twice a year, and even if you pass the test, there's a cumulative score that goes into rankings, awards, how long you've been in your rate, what your eval was, and it's hard because there's a limited number of billets available, and even if you're really really good at your job, there may not be a billet available for you to get promoted. And this was my case. I had a hard time making second, and I had a really really hard time making first. E6. But as an E5, I forward deployed with the JSET. We had 2 theaters that we were going to operate in. I worked really hard to make sure threat assessments were complete and gathered a lot of medical information on both of those locations and operated as the senior medical department representative who hadn't been to independent duty corpsman school. And so I was functioning outside of not just my qualifications, but also way outside of my rank, and was eventually, to my surprise, awarded a Navy Commendation Medal, which is typically, for the E6 and E7 Mafia, not for the E5 Mafia. I was really humbled that somebody thought so highly of the work that I had done that I would rate that level of an award. And coincidentally, I actually made first just before I was awarded the Navy Com, so it didn't look too bad, I guess, for the team. But it was like, wow, I did good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That is awesome. So I'm reading when I met you before and reading your bio and stuff, it says 15 years in the
Hmm.
Navy. You don't, I mean, that's a long haul there not to go to the 20.
Yeah.
So, what led to your transition in service?
Two things. GWAT was really, really busy. I don't think I need to explain that to anybody who's going to be listening to this podcast. Um, you know, uh, like I said, from 2002 to 2009, we were nuts to knuckles,
Yeah.
very, very busy. And I grew up in a Navy family. My stepdad was gone pretty much everything, always. Raised by essentially a single mother who had some mental and physical health issues. And so for me, family is really, really important. And I also didn't want to see that cycle repeat with my children. So that was part of it. I think the other part of it, I think I know, is I felt called to professional vocational ministry. I got to be a professional Christian. Um,
Yeah. Right.
Chew on that for another time. And so I had an opportunity to leave the service, leave Virginia Beach, move up to Pennsylvania, and start a church for people who don't like or go to church, a jeans and t-shirt kind of place where it's simple language about the Bible, about God, about Jesus, but a place where community was really the driving factor and open questions were welcome. Again, leading with humility, not knowing that you don't have it all figured out, and the willingness to not have to be right.
Right. Right.
So we moved up here in March of 2009, and we've been up here ever since. And coincidentally, this is the longest I've ever lived in one space in my entire life. I think I have one box downstairs in the basement that I haven't unpacked just because I don't know if I can commit to that, because that means I'm like fully moved in. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but that was a big part of that transition. I wanted to continue to care for people in a different context, spiritually specifically, but I also really wanted to be home to raise my 3 kids and be a
Yeah.
part of their story growing up.
Yep. I completely understand that. And in that, so we're in kind of a weird time as a military, coming out of Afghanistan.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of mid-career, 10 years to 15 years service members getting out, right? Right. When the finish line is so close. What advice would you give to somebody that's about to enter the transition process, thinking about transitioning? What would you say to them?
So the transition. My friend Eric Brew, who used to work for American Corporate Partners, and he and I talked about this, and he really abdicated this thought about having a plan, working your plan, and then having somebody hold you accountable to that plan.
Yeah.
Um, for me, like, I knew where I was going. I'd already bought a house. I knew the job that I was going to be doing, and I knew who I was going to be doing it with. I knew my team, but I didn't have community. And I can tell you, in my line of work now, we talk about the transition from service into the civilian sector being one of the most challenging things for our clients and for the people we get to do work with. And it was no different for me. I knew what I was doing, but it still took me a year to like figure out, like, what am I doing and who am I? You miss, as much as you bitch and complain about 0430 grinder PT and working until 1800 every day, you miss that stuff. You miss that bond. And so have a plan, work that plan, have somebody hold you accountable to that plan, and then find a way to build community.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if you're someone getting ready to join the military, I would tell you to go find a veteran mentor, go find somebody who has done what you want to do, and just sit on their hip and learn from them and be mentored. I had the honor to do this for my son's best friend who graduated last year. I was on the wrestling team with him as well. Right now, he's in second wake at pre-phase at Buds. He said, Mike, I want to be a SEAL. How do I do that? I'm like, well, I wasn't a SEAL, but I got to hang out with some of those guys, and I did grow up across the street from where Buds is. So let me tell you this. And so I got to spend time with him in the pool. I got to talk to him about mentality, about it's 90% mental and 10%
Yeah.
physical. And so I think we as veterans, as a community, we need to find those coachable moments. We need to go don't let the recruiters go take the kids at the high school. Go tell the kids at the high school what the truth is, and then don't let the recruiter pull one over on you when you get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But go mentor somebody. We have so much to offer. We're not broken. We're not
Yeah.
wounded. We have value intrinsically and extrinsically. So go invest in somebody else's life, and it will be a better thing for you and for them. You might actually get more out of it than they do.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I didn't know the value in mentorship until later in my military career, and it's so important. And I wish that the services would get behind and link, at the recruiting office, they would link veterans and that prospective candidate there to
Mhm.
have mentorship to help them succeed. But yeah, you're right. Mentorship is just so important and great advice there. So in your post military life, I did
Mhm.
some data mining and pulled direct quotes. You're a creative arts pastor, a lead pastor, a supervisor at Starbucks, uh, director of event teams, and that's just to name a few. But there's one I really want to highlight, and you kind of talked about it earlier. Is you started a church for people who don't like church.
Mhm.
Explain that a little more.
Um, so I grew up really, really confused about faith with a lot of different ideas. I think my mom was kind of like soup du jour, what fits today. And I'm certainly not narcissistic enough to say that I've got it figured out. I don't. But when I did go to church, I was confused by the pomp and the circumstance. I was confused by the rite and the ritual. I didn't understand why we were saying the things we were saying. Nothing of it was real, and nothing of it made sense. And so when I think about people, when I think about my life, I'm a relational person. That's really, really important to me. It's why I left the service to make sure I was home for my kids. Um, we wanted to create a place where people who maybe had an interest or a curiosity about God, Jesus, Holy Spirit could ask those questions without being shunned and would be welcome regardless of where they're at on their faith journey. Like, hey, I'm just here for the bagels and the coffee. To the person, like, this is my everything. Church is my life. I wanted to create a safe space. I wanted to create
Yeah,
on ramps. For my personal story, that day that I was fired from my first platoon was a seminal moment. My marriage was failing. I just got fired from my job at work. I had no self worth and no self value. And I remember walking out of the team that day saying, God, if you're real, this is your chance to show up, buddy, because I don't know if I'm going to wake up for tomorrow because I don't have anything to do for.
right.
And so I wanted to create a safe space where people in that same place in life could say, hey, there is grace, there is forgiveness. And I'm not talking about like in a holy way. I'm just talking about in a life way. Like we all screw up.
Yeah,
Nothing pisses me off more than the bony finger of contempt from somebody at church, like, you're doing it all wrong. Dude, stick in your pew, stay in your lane. And so we planted a church called Legacy Christian Church. It was a place where stories matter. It was a place where you could bring your questions. And it was really rooted in the idea that, uh, you know, I don't have to have all the right answers. The doctrine was really, really simple for those of you who want to stick around and listen to this. God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, baptism, communion, and that's it. And united in the essentials and grace and everything else. I don't, and honestly, I think some of the people that are arguing some of these doctrinal issues in the church, dude, you're already as saved as Billy Graham. What does it matter for the person who, like me, had just gotten fired from his first platoon, went home to a wife and a baby and another kid that were like, I don't like you and I don't want to be around you? Like, that person doesn't care about the doctrinal squabble. That person says, I need to be loved, I need to be accepted, I need to be lifted up and put in the right direction. And
Yeah.
so it was really important for me to do that, because I think, the church experiences that I had in my youth were very judgmental. Were very, it's black and it's white and there's no gray areas. And my friend Dustin Kensrew talks about this in one of his songs. You need to learn to embrace the gray,
Yeah.
because life is full of shades of gray. There are some absolutes, but again, I'm not. How can I hold you accountable if that's something that you don't ascribe to or believe in?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah, I love that, and something I picked up out of it and wrote it down immediately was united in the essentials. Man, that's I think that transcends, church and religion. That's as a family man, just as a human being. Sometimes in this time of excess,
Hmm.
we forget that if we just unite in the essentials, we can have success and happiness and all of the above. But I love that. Thanks for sharing that story and another story. So. Uh, I don't know if it's a factor that I'm getting older, right? Or because I'm a veteran and what I did, but I come across more guys and girls that I served with that either that had cancer or that have cancer, and it's kind of scary, right? And then you're the next one that I've met that's a prior service member that's recovered, from stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Um, what was it? What's that story? How did you recover out of it? How did you learn about it? I mean, we could probably have a whole podcast dedicated just to this, but I think I'd like you to just share a little bit because there's. I mean, I just found out the other day another a close friend of mine, showed up to work and all of a sudden his legs and his arms couldn't move, and they went in and he had tumors all up and down his spine. So um, I don't know what's going on there. I don't think it's a coincidence anymore. But if you just share a little bit of your story.
Yeah. So one of the things, that especially those of us in the special operations community, we pride ourselves on being professional athletes in some way, shape, or form. Even after service, a lot of us still run. Maybe they're not Navy SEALs. Maybe they've become Gravy SEALs.
That's right, right.
There's supposed to be some humor in that. But we all, there's something physically and emotionally cathartic about being able to exercise. And
Yeah,
so I don't know what it was. I just noticed like I wasn't able to recover from my exercise regularly. Every time I do, squats or deadlifts or something, like my back would hurt for like a week and I didn't understand it. It got to the point where I couldn't run. And so I thought I'd just blown a disc or something like that. So I was going to chiropractic like, twice a week for like 3 months, and it just wasn't getting any better. And I should have listened to my wife. Ladies, gentlemen out there, listen to your significant others. If something's wrong, just swallow your pride and go to the doctor, please. Um, so it wasn't until I went and saw, a physiatrist that ordered an MRI that we discovered that I had like full blown cancer in my pelvis, in my hip, in my spine, in my ribs. It was everywhere. And it hadn't gotten into my vital organs yet. Thank you, Jesus. But it was, if I'd waited much longer, I might not be here to have this podcast with you today. And so again, I spent a lot of time looking forward, not looking back. But if I were to go back, I would say, go to the doctor,
yeah,
please. Stop
yeah.
being so prideful and arrogant, stubborn son of a gun. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you're going to get cancer, I will tell you this: non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is the best dice you can roll. It is not just beatable; it's curable. It is not. It's it still sucks. I'm not going to lie to you; it still sucks. But
Yeah,
it's not glioblastoma. It's not sarcoid sarcoma. It's a beatable thing. I went through 6 treatments of chemo every 3 weeks from August until December. I had 2 follow-up treatments of methotrexate in my spine because the kind of cancer that I had, the B-cell lymphoma, likes to come back in the spine and the brain. And odds are, if it does come back, 6 out of 10 odds of beating it. I like those odds. I'll take them.
yeah,
Um, if it does come back, the odds get real small. But
mm,
I would also tell you this. So my mentor that I moved up here to plant the church with was diagnosed with cancer 3 years into our church plant. That's why I became the lead pastor after he passed away. Richie, even in his death, continued to inform and inspire my cancer journey many years later.
Mhm.
His strength, his faith, his grace, his optimism. Richie was the kind of guy that if you needed faith, you could borrow from his very ample supply. Um, so for me, it came down to three things. It came down to grit, it came down to grace, and it came down to gratitude. I was really, really fortunate to have three friends that I met with on a Zoom call Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 5 o'clock in the morning because it was COVID. And so, like, we couldn't go do our gym thing like we normally did. And those guys, they checked in on me. They asked me the hard questions and they treated me like a real person. Like,
Yeah.
if you have a friend who has cancer, you know someone who can't, has cancer, don't treat them like a patient. They just want to be normal for 5 minutes. They don't want to answer the questions about their cancer. They just want you to treat them like a regular person and spend time. So as an extrovert who values community, I realize that my I get energy from being around people, and so if I'm grumpy, jagged, sarcastic jackass Michael, then nobody wants to be around me. Nobody wants to spend time with that person. So I had to choose every day. I had to make a choice. Like, I decide how I feel. I may not decide how I physically feel, but I decide how I emotionally feel, and I decide how I react to the world around me with those feelings.
Yeah.
So um, I had to face every day with a little bit of grit. I had to choose to be hopeful and optimistic. And I'm not going to lie to you, my faith journey certainly informed my cancer journey. I don't know how people endure such a difficult health issue without having a deep grounded faith, a binding faith that guides them as who they are. But I was also really, really fortunate that I had three friends that if I didn't show up one day, they called.
Yeah.
They asked like, "Hey, everything good? Just sleeping in today?" Um, Funny stories about cancer. I spent my first 2 years in medicine working on cancer, so like knew what I was going to be getting into. I knew all the hair was going to fall out. I didn't think about my eyelashes falling out. You have
Oh,
no
wow.
idea how valuable your eyelashes are until you can't stop getting crap in your eye because you don't have eyelashes to protect your eyeball. Um, Funny thing about cancer, I got COVID in the middle of all of it, which, nobody's like, oh, that's funny. No, let me tell you why it's funny. Because as a cancer patient, you get front of the line privileges. You're not waiting in the ER for 6 hours for doc in a box to come tell you, hey, you got COVID. Take two drops. Call me in the morning. Man, I was in like 20 minutes. I was in an isolation room. I got direct admitted right after that. I got the monoclonal antibodies. I was feeling like a superstar after 24, 48 hours. I come home, my wife is laid up on the couch and she stayed that way for a week and a half. And I'm like, ah, sucks to be you. As I'm there with no hair and 40 pounds
Eyebrows.
of weight because of all the chemo and the prednisone. So it's finding the humor, right? You can't
Yeah.
take life too seriously. You can't take it all too seriously. And I zeroed in on 3-week cycles. I knew that I was going to get chemo every 21 days. And so I didn't look ahead to the next mile to the finish line. I looked ahead to the next milestone. David Goggins, if you're listening, I kept it small. I kept it focused and just to the next thing. There you go. Works. It works out really, really well. So that's kind of the cancer journey. I'm 2.5 years in remission at this point. I will tell you this from the laboratory perspective. I had an elevated LDH and elevated platelets. Other than that, I looked completely healthy and normal.
Yeah.
I had
Wow.
no other signs, and they always taught us, pain alone is never cancer. Well, I'm going to throw the BS flag, 15-yard penalty, and say that's not true.
Yeah.
So, ladies, gentlemen, listen to your spouses or your benevolent benefactors and loved ones. Go see the doctor. Get the
Yeah.
checkup. Go get the colonoscopy. Go get the exams. Please listen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely right. Thank you for sharing that. And I think especially true for former service members and even more so people who touch the soft community in any aspect. You're
Mhm.
just told to put that pain or that thing that's bothering you in a bag and forget about it and keep moving. And getting older sucks. That pain might be relating to something. Your body's telling you something. Listen to your body. It's one of the hardest things had to do since transition. And thankfully, I also have a wife there that says, "Yuma, would you stop being so hard headed and just go? You don't. It's free. Go see the doctor." So, thanks
Yes.
again for sharing that, and we're so happy that you beat it and we're able to move on to the next phase. This
Mm,
what you're doing now, which is
yeah.
so vitally important with Stop Soldier Suicide, and you're the senior manager of corporate partnerships there at Triple S. How did you become involved with them? Tell us a little bit about the organization and what they do, and just anything you think you should share about Stop Soldier Suicide.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that go into this. So first, service members and veteran allies, as you're transitioning out, make sure your LinkedIn profile is on point. Please learn how to translate what you did in the service to what it is in the civilian sector, because people don't understand what we did. So LinkedIn definitely helped me get that job. I was really fortunate to have a career coach, a friend of mine, take me under his wing and coach me for 5 months for free, and just invest in helping me work through that hiring process, from having a hunter board, like a Kanban board, kind of checking where I'm at in the process, to just that diligence of I'm filing 3 applications a week, I'm researching companies, I'm getting involved in these conversations. Um, and what I found, is the role that I'm in right now. I personally believe God has been preparing me for all my life. Um, I don't know of a better fit job for me where I can use my skills as a medic and my time as a veteran, where I can care for people personally and spiritually and relationally from my years as a pastor. Um, I have an MBA. I did a lot of fundraising in church planting. That's a common thing, and those experiences all have shaped me for the role that I'm in now. Um, so, all right, where to go? Stop Soldier Suicide. We're a veteran service organization. We are the only national nonprofit. We are focused solely on reducing the military suicide crisis. And since 2010, we have evolved from a 1-800 helpline to a fully vetted, fully staffed, licensed clinical social worker, suicide advisory council, uh, psychologist oversight wellness model that is providing free, confidential, one-to-one, personalized, not DoD or VA affiliated mental health and suicide intervention care to any veteran, any service member, regardless of their discharge status, their branch, or how long they served. If you were in space camp, boot camp for a day and you didn't make it, we'll still take care of you. Even our friends in Space Force. Ha 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 ha
Yeah.
ha. Coast Guard, Army, Air Force, Marines, Navy, Space Force, if uniform service, we are here to care for you. We focus on high risk and medium risk clients, those that are at the greatest risk for suicide. Our mission is to reduce veteran and military suicide. We do this with enhanced data insights, which I can unpack in a minute. Focused client acquisition, which means we spend a lot of money on making sure we find you when you need us, and suicide-specific intervention services. We really want to see a nation where veteran suicide, military suicide is on par with national averages. Right now, veterans are 57% more likely to die by suicide than any other population group. If you're between the ages of 18 and 45, suicide, and you're a veteran, suicide is the second leading cause of death. Not a car accident, not a drug overdose, not cancer, and not a heart attack, suicide. There's something going on in our military community that needs to be addressed. And I'm not here to point fingers. I'm not here to point blame. I'm just telling you that if you're a veteran or service member, and I have my own VA story, and we'll just let that be what it is. But if you're stuck and you need mental health support, there is no shame in this game. Go to goroger.org. We are here to provide those services to you. And if you're stuck, like you're looking for housing, you're looking for somebody to help you with your comp and pen claim, if you're looking for somebody to help you, get a car, get a job, call us. We have 4,000 different partners that we've established across the country in a referral network where we can get you connected to somebody who can get you the help that you need. But if you're in need of mental health suicide intervention support, please. And here's what I really, really love about our website. When you go to the website, goroger.org, there's a big button up in the corner. It doesn't say donate, it says get help. And if you are the spouse, friend, family member, knucklehead in charge of someone else who you know is dealing with mental health issues, you can refer a friend. They don't even have to pick up the phone or do the internet connection. You can phone a friend, you can do it on their behalf. They still have to accept services, and that's up to your choice, but you can help somebody. You can do, when you're doing your buddy checks and you know they're not going to call 988 and you know they're not going to wait for the veteran crisis line to pick up the phone, you can submit on their behalf with us. And I love that, for a lot of different reasons. My wife lost one of her sisters to suicide. My oldest daughter, who's in the Navy serving with Marine right now, 2016 high school graduate, lost eight friends to suicide when she was in high school. And I know that she's had her own mental health journey that she's had to navigate. One of my best friends is the executive officer of 2BCT and forward deployed right now. And I'll let you go look up foreign events and see what's happening. I'm not going to explain anymore, but I know that when my daughter comes home from deployment, when my friend comes home from deployment, and they have friends that are going to need our help and services, that we're going to be here to pick up the phone. They're not going to spend 2 years getting the runaround at their local VA clinic, having some nurse practitioner subscribe them antidepressants and stimulants instead of doing a psych eval and getting them the help that they need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, not pointing fingers, just sharing my story.
Right. And thanks for that. Thanks. We got to talk to the senior manager of corporate partnerships, Michael, there a little bit, and we're just going to go back to civilian Michael in a second. But one thing about Stop Soldier Suicide is that it's not for soldiers only.
Nope.
Navy, I mean, it's everybody. I've already had people ask me like, "Hey, well, I wasn't in the army because I'm a Navy." Like, doesn't matter. It's a name, right? And that's why you changed to Roger, right? If you could
Yeah, so yeah,
shed a
there's
little
a
light
lot
there.
in there to unpack, right? And
Yeah.
actually not a lot. So here's what we found, right? Unless you were a soldier, and granted, we were founded by 3 soldiers, so it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And I will tell you, 60% of military and veteran suicides happen in the Army. So, there is reasoning there. But we found that the phrase Roger, any of us who've had a comm course understands Roger. Anybody who's had to stand before the warrant and say Roger that, sir, with appropriate sarcasm knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
Roger is accessible. It's accessible, especially for our active duty folks that don't want to have to go through the chain of command, that don't want to have to go to Oscar or go to their other, because maybe you're like me and you had a security clearance and you're getting a gazillion different special pays, but maybe you have a claustrophobic moment and you happen to be a diver, and claustrophobia, that doesn't work. And so you lose your dive status for a period of time, which also means you lose all your extra money. And you have to spend 3 months trying to get requalled before you can get back to doing your job, because so much of our job is where our value and our identity come from, right? So Roger is an accessible website program. It's still the same. It's still licensed clinical social workers. It's licensed practicing counselors. It's still direct suicide advisory council oversight. It's overseen by the same psychologist. It is personal care, and we're saving lives. We saw 4,000 clients last year. 1,000 of them became clients that we took in under our care. We see 97% increase in wellness in all of these clients, self-reported. 2/3, 3/4 of them say that we saved their life, but I would argue that they saved their own lives. We just got to be the vehicle that walked with them. But Yuma, the thing I'm most proud of is I can tell you that in the 13 years we've existed, we've never lost somebody to suicide in our care.
Wow.
I don't know how long I can say that, and I'm not saying that as like, hey, look at us, we're so perfect. We're not. We're human. But I can tell you that we've never lost somebody to our care, and that's special, because again, I think about my daughter, I think about my buddy, I think about all you guys out there. I know that what we do is special. So my job is specifically to build corporate partnerships to raise money to support this endeavor. It's going to be free as long as we can make it free, as long as I do my job. And so I specifically target veteran employee resource groups, because as a veteran on staff, I speak a language that some of my teammates don't speak. I get access to certain doors that maybe others don't. And so I can share that story with my fellow veterans and service members. We provide not just wellness services, but we also do suicide intervention in the workplace workshops. We do mental health in the workplace workshops. We do some physical challenges to try to make it fun because we all need to keep our bodies moving.
Yeah, that's right.
I do a lot of webinars in May and September, specifically targeted at corporate America to help not just raise awareness and address stigma, but to get folks moving behind what we do as an organization.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate, everything you're doing there, everything Stop Soldier Suicide's doing, GoRoger.com. I mean, and that brings us to the next question. I want to make you unemployed, right?
Please do.
I want to put you back on the LinkedIn job market. And it's I don't know if we'll ever do it. Suicide's near and dear to my heart. It's something that kind of started this podcast, and just, the power of conversation and sharing your story and hearing somebody's story, I think, is also very valuable. But how do we do it? How do we stop it? What can we do? What more can we do if you're a veteran listening, a leader, or somebody that's just in a tough spot? How can we make you, Michael, unemployed?
There's so many things. It's not weak to ask for help. It's not
Yep.
weak to get help. We have to crush the stigma associated with it. Those of us that served under the knuckle dragging eras where we put that junk in a box and we just move forward, we've got to stop that backwards thinking. We've got to embrace that mental health, and mental health care is here to stay, and
Yeah.
it's good for us. It is healthy for us. Even if you're not dealing with suicidal ideation, maybe you're like my wife and you got a little bit of OCD, and that just brings some challenges to your life. It's okay to have that therapy.
Yeah.
It's nothing wrong with it. It's totally human. So we have to crush the stigma. We
Yeah.
have to raise awareness that there are services out there. We are not the only suicide intervention. AFSP is out there. SAMHSA has got some great support options. 988, the Veteran Crisis Line. We're not the only arrow in the quiver, but I think we're a really damn important one, right? So how
Yeah.
do you make me unemployed? It's not just buddy checks. It's killing that stigma. It's having those conversations. Yeah, and if I went through a training through an organization called Living Works, it's called Assist. It's applied suicide intervention support therapy. It's basically being a first responder for someone who's dealing with suicide.
Yeah.
I think between my ministry and my military time, I had those skills, but it was really nice to have it packaged in a 2-day class. We need to be first responders. If we see somebody in crisis, don't turn a blind eye, don't look away, be the good Samaritan, go step out, and just asking somebody how they're doing can save their life, can change their day.
Absolutely.
Um, I think back to a boot camp story from my daughter. She's marching back from Lord knows where, and some recruit drill instructor pulls her aside and said, what's the wrong with, what's wrong with your face? And she's just like, that's just my face, petty officer. She's got RBF. She'll tell you she's got RBF, right? But like, that's just her face. But that at least told her somebody noticed that she was there and she was
Yeah.
alive
Yeah. Yeah.
and she existed and had value and purpose. You never know. Just pull
Yeah.
somebody aside, ask them how they're doing. You never know how much that counts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so put me out of business, raise awareness, embrace that mental health care is important and it's valuable.
Yeah.
Um, Man, I really hope that we can fix this issue.
Yeah.
But veteran service members, there are so many people out there pulling for you that care about you more than just the token, hey, thank you for your service. There's somebody out there who is incredibly thankful for you, and you have meaning and value.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. If you're out there and you're listening, right? If you're struggling, it doesn't have to be Stop Soldier Suicide. It doesn't have to be some other organization. You can just call your friend that you haven't seen in years and talk to him, because I know that's pulled me out of a dark place before. It's just
Mhm.
having an hour-long conversation with somebody, that I hadn't seen in a while, and kind of remembering the old days,
Yeah.
talking about what we're doing now, and then just took the load off, right? And on the other side, I've been the person that's walked into the therapy office, lied to him for 6 months, and then finally on month 7, I opened up, and it changed my life. So um, you got to initiate movement. It's a military saying, a
Yep.
ruck up, initiate movement, take that first step, and if you know somebody that needs it, take a step toward them, right? And that's it. But all heavy stuff there. And
Yes,
the last couple questions here as we land the plane or bring the ship to port, maybe might be
I land
more
the plane all the
appropriate.
time. You're good.
Okay. Um, let's lighten it up a little bit. So you're a
Yep,
proud father of your daughter followed in your footsteps.
yep.
What's that like? What's that like as the dad? You look back and what
There
kind of
is a
conversations do
family
you have?
legacy of the last name DeSelm in the military service since the Civil War, and
Oh
I just
wow,
think that's so cool
that is
to
very cool.
know. Like, there's my sister has the foot locker from my great 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 grandfather Lyman F. DeSelm that he had when he was in the Army. That's just such a neat legacy to move forward, and it's an honor to be a part of that. It's my daughter, she's got one more year left in. She's going to go to PA school when she gets out. At least that's the plan. um, it's really neat to see her grow and mature, and deal with the adversity that comes with
Yeah.
being in the service. She was a fortuitous story for us. My wife and I met while we were stationed at Naval Medical Center San Diego, aka Balboa or Hotel California for everybody else. That's where we met. That's where our oldest daughter is born. And that also is her first duty station.
Oh wow.
And for the first 2 years that she was in the Navy, she couldn't run into somebody that didn't know me or not or know her mother.
Oh
And that's just so cool. It's like, man, what a small military community we are. And even still, like, we were in Hawaii for Christmas this year. Oh shucks, right?
right. Yeah.
I got to see a surgeon that I worked for 20 years ago who lives on the island now. And then when my daughter's vehicle ran into some mechanical issues, it's parked outside of his house. The friends that we make in the service, we carry with us for a lifetime, and we will always be there to carry each other and support each other, even if it's our kids.
Yeah.
So it's been really neat to watch her grow, and I'm excited to see what she becomes.
Yeah.
I
That's
joke her a
awesome.
lot and say she's going to make a great chief someday. She doesn't want to hear that from me. She's very adamant that she's getting out. Um, so I think from a parent perspective, it's important not to try to live through vicariously, to coach when appropriate and not inject coaching when not asked for, but also be their biggest fan. Man, she made second class faster than I did, and her mother never made second class, and so there's all sorts of fun little moments in there. It's it's
Yeah.
it's been a really neat experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's really cool. Something you'll have forever. So last question, everybody gets it. If you could go back and give that new recruit standing, at that recruiter office, you're about to take off and head to wherever your basic training was. What advice would you give that
Mm.
to Selm?
Back to our earlier question, I would say find a veteran mentor.
Yeah, wow.
Find
Yep.
somebody to take you under your wings. I was really fortunate that when I came home and announced to my family that I had joined the military, that my stepfather asked me, all the questions about my contract and made sure that I didn't get hosed. And so, like, that was really cool. That said, I would tell you this, I went through a lot of therapy and a lot of counseling to stop looking backwards, Yuma. So
Well,
if you're
it's
trying
still
to
there.
undo all those years, that humor aside, um, I was selfish, I was insecure, and I certainly wasn't ready for the road ahead of me. However, I can tell you it was the experiences and the adversity that I encountered that shaped who I am today. So I would probably tell, young Mr. DeSelm to surf more, to spend less, to believe that I'm good enough to be in the company of others. I would tell him that he's loved. I would tell him that he's got nothing to prove and no one to impress. I would tell him to embrace discipline, seek correction, acknowledge failure, and grow, because we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes.
Yeah.
Um, I uh, I graduated high school at 16. I was 17 when I walked into that recruiter's office. Long hair, beach bum. I was content to get a PhD in philosophy and sit on a beach and smoke weed every day for the rest of my life. But I knew I was meant for more. I needed to do more. Um, and so the military provided me the structure that I needed to get my life on track. It provided me a framework. It sharpened and strengthened the moral fibers that I had already had from a family history of military service. Um, I met my wife All three of my kids were born at all three of the different duty stations I had, and it's provided me friends that span the globe and span the test of time.
Yeah.
So I would tell young me to look forward to those things, to not
Yeah.
be in such a rush, and to just embrace the suck, enjoy the moment. Uh, it's not as bad as you think it is. My
Yeah.
daughter's first tattoo says it's not a bad. It says it's a bad day, not a bad life.
That's
So
cool. Yeah.
that day when I got fired from that platoon, it was a bad day. It's not a bad life.
Yeah. 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 That's awesome. I love that. From one veteran to another. Thank you for your service. Thank
Thank you,
you for
sir.
your continued service to the
Mm,
community because it's so vitally needed. What you're doing. Thank you for your daughter's service. That's awesome. It was. We need people like her to say, "Here I am. Send me." Right?
mhm.
It's amazing. And just thank for taking the time to come on the show today. And for everybody out there watching and listening. So stop soldier suicide. I'm doing the live stream again this year to support them. We raised a little over 11,000 last year for Objective Zero. We're going to do 10 times that this year. That's the goal. Okay. If you don't have lofty goals, you're going to be mediocre. So we're going to shoot for the moon and hopefully get there. So tune in March 2nd. Myself and a bunch of other Ranger veterans, we're going to play some Call of Duty for 24 hours, raise some money for you guys. And it doesn't matter if it's $1 or $100,000. Every little bit helps, and hopefully
Yeah,
it saves somebody's life, saves their relationship with their kids, their wives, and they get to someday have a grandkid sitting on their knee and telling them the stories. Because there's far too many veterans out there that are not going to have that opportunity ever. And if we can save one, every minute, every dollar, every cent is worth it in my mind. And I got to stop before I start getting emotional here. But thanks for your time. Why? Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff, and get this out there. And thanks again, Mike. It was awesome talking to you.
pleasure has been mine. Thank you so much.